Welcome back to What's Next with Lacey, the podcast where I interview young professionals about their career journeys so far. Hello everyone, welcome back. Happy Tuesday, happy new episode day. I am so excited to be here as I am every episode. So I guess that's nothing new, but hello, welcome back. Also, hello to any new listeners of What's Next. Welcome to the crew, welcome to the journey. I am so happy to have you here. I clearly must be doing something right if I got you here, so that's great, yay me. This week we are continuing to dive into the legal field, the career path of a lawyer. So if you are interested in this and you haven't already listened to the interview I did a while back with a commercial litigator in a New York City law firm, that is one to follow this episode up with. But this week we are rewinding a little bit and we are talking about the earlier stages of a law career, and that is law school. Yes, this week I spoke to the wonderful Sean about all things law school. He is about to go into his final year at Cardozo Law School. So we talk classes, we talk LSATs, we talk law review, and obviously we talk staying sane during the crazier times of law school. But also we obviously touch upon his own personal journey. And spoiler alert, he was heading down the pre-med path before swerving to law school. So proof that career switches can happen. Anyway, I'll let him take it from here, but I hope you enjoy my conversation with Sean. Sean, it is lovely to meet you. Welcome to What's Next. How's it going?
Oh, it's going really well. Lovely to meet you, Lacey.
One of my favorite parts about doing this podcast is that I get to meet people that I haven't met before. We were connected through one of my previous guests, Amelia, but we did both go to Columbia, right? You were also Columbia, but Amelia's class of 2020.
That's right. And you were class of 2019?
Yes, I was the year above you. Yeah. But so sadly we never met, but this is awesome. We get to meet now. I'm very excited to talk through your story. You have such an interesting career path and have made so many twists and turns. So I feel like a lot can be learnt from your story and from your path so far. So right now you are going into your third year at Cardozo Law School, right?
That's right.
Firstly, congratulations. I know both my brother and sister are lawyers. I know how much work 1L and 2L, especially 1L, is. So you made it through. 3L, I've heard, is a breeze. But how are you feeling? How are you feeling about law school so far?
Oh, it's great. I'm sure I will talk about this more later, but I wasn't always pre-law. So coming into law school, I didn't know actually as much about it than as maybe some other people who have known that they wanted to become lawyers for a long time do. But I heard that law school is difficult, especially your first year, and that there are people that are, out there to, they're trying to get you, and it's very competitive. But that hasn't actually been my experience for the most part. That everybody that, at least that I've been friends with at law school, has been very nice, and we all help each other out. So that's been really great.
What drew you to Cardozo? Why did you choose that program when you were deciding about law school?
I think the location was probably the biggest factor. It is in New York City, and I grew up in Boston. So for me, I wanted to stay closer to home. The thing about New York that's nice, if you have family in Boston, is that they're close enough to you that you can go to them every time you want to visit, but they're not so close that they ask that you visit very often or too often.
That is so real, so real.
And I went to undergrad at Columbia, so I was kind of familiar with the city already, and I knew that I really liked it a lot. So New York was kind of a top choice for me.
Yeah. I've heard also that many people choose their school, their graduate school, because you're building out a network of people, and you are more likely to get recruited into firms and such where you go to school. Have you felt like that's been something that you've seen happen in your experience?
Oh, that's definitely true. Yeah. It also depends on the type of school you go to. Usually if you go to a higher ranked school, like Columbia, for example, you have more flexibility about where you want to practice, where you're able to practice location-wise. But generally speaking, if you want to practice in New York, for example, it's nice to go to a school in New York because a lot of the law school experience is also networking with other people in the field in the area that you want to practice in. So it's a big benefit to go to school in that area.
We will get into your journey to law school in a little bit later, but you are the first guest I've had on who's actually in the trenches at law school. So I want to dive in a little bit to the specifics of your law school experience. Starting with, what does a day look like for you? How many classes are you in? How much time are you spending reading? Because I know that that's a lot of law school. How are you preparing for those cold calls? What's a day? Yeah, what's a day like?
It seems like you know a lot about law school already. Maybe it's because of all the siblings.
I've been through it with them. That is
Uh-huh.
for sure. I've seen two law school experiences, and they loved it. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but it was tough. But yeah, so I can speak a little bit to the experience, but still, I wanna hear from you. And yeah, like tell me the secrets. Tell me the nitty gritty.
Oh gosh. So as you hinted at earlier, the third year I'm expecting to be a lot more chill. Fewer classes, not as many responsibilities with organizations that you're a part of. But on average, my first and second year of school, I was taking about 5 classes per semester. And in the first year, they're all what they call doctrinal classes, which are classes that are, usually tested on the bar. They're kind of considered essential for lawyers to know when they're just starting out, especially to get a good grip on what the law is and how it works. Because, yeah, a lot of non-lawyers don't really come in with that kind of background knowledge. So law students usually need to get their bearings in that first year. And then your second year is a lot of professional development, I would say. You're doing more networking, you're meeting with your leading clubs and organizations, you're, writing or editing for journals like the Law Review. And that's how you kind of build out your skills to get that, summer associate position after your second year, if that's what you're into.
Talk to me about law review. I feel like that's something that probably isn't commonly known outside of legal circles. So, can you share like what does law review exactly mean? Why do people want to do it, and what's the process of getting onto law review?
Almost every school has a legal journal, and if they have multiple, usually the Law Review is the most prestigious one. If you go to Harvard, it'll be called Harvard Law Review. If you go to Cardozo, like my school, then it'll be called the Cardozo Law Review. And it's an academic journal, but for law. And what distinguishes it from other kinds of journals, like in medicine, is that it's not usually based on quantitative research. You are, as a staff editor, which I was my second year of law school, your role is to go through and help edit all of these papers that either outside contributors or people on staff or other professors within the law school write for the journal. And all of these articles usually are comprised of a mix of case law, which is decisions that judges have made in the past about various issues, and statutory law, which is laws that have been passed by legislatures, and other outside analysis, and then their own original analysis. So the challenge for legal writing is that almost everything needs to have some sort of citation to it. Everything other than your own original analysis has to be cited back to some other kind of outside source, which is a lot of citations because, I mean, these articles run for dozens of pages, and then you end up having over 700 citations that you have to check.
Oh my goodness. I did not realize it was that many. That's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't realize it either until they told me to do it. But
And you were like, wait, how long does this go on for?
exactly. And at that point, it was a little too late, but I don't regret the experience. They try to spread it out over the course of the semester so that you get every 2 weeks, you get an assignment, and that assignment you are tasked with basically editing about a page of somebody's manuscript. And you're checking like all the citations, making sure the things that they cite actually support the points that they're making and that they're formatted correctly. Yeah, a lot of it is about formatting, I guess.
Mm.
Yeah, I think lawyers really love getting into technicalities when it comes to these kinds of writerly things. So that's actually kind of what they screen for when they are recruiting for these journals. There's this
Okay.
thing called the writing competition, and that is one of the ways that you can distinguish yourself from your peers is by doing well, basically identifying any problems with grammar or structure or citation format within an example passage that they give you. And the more mistakes you identify, the higher your score. And based on that score, that helps determine whether or not you're fit for the law review.
Gosh, I just don't think that is something I would remotely be good at. I feel like my knowledge just basically, already you can tell by how I speak, my knowledge just generally speaking on grammar is probably not up to snuff to be able to get onto law reviews. So that is incredibly impressive, and I didn't realize how much detail and went into this. So, have you submitted for the law review? Are you kind of someone who would write for law review, write one of these articles for law review, or are you strictly more on the like editing end?
So all of the staff editors are actually asked to write something for the law review, at least for submission. So that was basically my task throughout my second year was, along with doing all the editing assignments, try and write something that could potentially be published. But because it's a pretty selective process. So not everybody that writes an article will get it published eventually. And that wasn't really, something that I really, wanted for my career anyway, because I have gotten published in other settings, like, in medicine. And it's not, I mean, it's nice to be cited by other people every once in a while, but it's not like an essential thing for your career. And I knew that going in. So I wasn't like so, you know, putting too much energy into pushing for my writing to be good enough to be in this journal. And
Yeah.
in the end, it wasn't accepted. And I'm okay about that.
Oh, I'm sorry, but indeed, there are so many other things to focus on for sure. Going back to classes quickly, how flexible are classes? Are you able to take a ton of electives? Like, are you able to not really like specialize, but like focus on what kind of types of law you want to focus on? And I'm assuming that would be more in 3L type of timing.
Yeah, so there are various requirements about core classes that they ask you to take throughout your second and third year of law school. So ideally, you'd want to plan out your schedule for those 2 years such that you're at least taking one of them, and such that you don't have to take all of them at once in a single semester at the end. But all of the other space in your schedule is left for you to fill out with electives and things that you're actually interested in learning about, which I think is really it's really cool because the the law is so diverse and it encompasses so many different fields. And depending on your personality, you might be drawn to one area of the law more than the other. And that second and third year is kind of where you figure that out. On my end, I always knew that I was interested in IP law, intellectual property, and that
Yeah.
basically encompasses three fields: patent law, trademark law, and copyright law. So what I ended up doing was I took patent law my fall of last year, and then this past spring I took copyright and trademark. So I kind of rounded out that IP trifecta, so to speak.
Over the years that you've done so far, what has been your favorite class?
I thought it would be patent law because that's kind of what I'm working in right now. But I think copyright was super interesting because it intersects a lot with the music industry. And the music industry is, music in general is something I always had a passion in. So it was really cool to see how the law applies in that context. So
Yeah. Speaking of, I know you just mentioned this, you are currently working at a patent law firm. So this is indeed your 2L summer. So it's, the as far as I understand, one of the most important summers of your law degree. So, talk to me about this internship. Why did you go down the patent route and what has the experience been like so far?
Yeah, so I didn't know I was going to be interested in patent law until one of my professors had a meeting with me where he basically told me to strongly consider it as a subspecialty to go into. Because I did have a biology degree from undergrad, which I think is still kind of unusual as a to have as a law student. And this professor of mine also had a pretty similar background to me. He used to be pre-med and then he switched over to law and then became a law professor. So when we were meeting, he was like, "Oh, you should think about patent law because I think it really fits your skill set and maybe your residual interests in technology and STEM." So based on that advice, there were like a few twists and turns, and I eventually landed a job at a patent firm last summer in New Jersey, and that was one particular area of patent law. It's called prosecution. And then this summer, I'm working in a different area of patent law, which is litigation. So this whole experience has kind of like slotted me into this. I wouldn't say pigeonholed me, but it's like basically set me on this pretty specific route into the legal field, which I think I think it's pretty rewarding. Patent law is it's pretty much right up my alley because it does like expose me to a lot of technology stuff, which I'm get pretty nerdy about, and it's also like a lot of like reading and writing, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Super dumb question, but can you explain to us exactly what patent law is?
Of course.
And also the difference between the prosecution side that you were on last summer and the litigation side that you're doing this summer.
So patent law is basically all about protecting the rights of inventors to their inventions. Inventors or whoever they assign their rights to. For example, if there's an inventor that works at a company, they might have an arrangement where the company gets the rights to whatever inventions are created while the inventor works for them. And there are two processes that are distinct such that they create these two categories of patent law. The first one is actually getting the patent, and the patent is just like it's a piece of paper that describes your invention sufficiently according to a bunch of statutes that you have to follow. And what that piece of paper does, or I mean, it's a stack of paper. What the stack of paper does is that it allows anybody else who reads it thoroughly and who is like within that field of art to make that invention. So that basically the idea behind that is that it encourages people to share their inventions with the world and not keep them secret. But in exchange, what the inventor gets is a limited monopoly. They get a period of a few decades where nobody else is allowed to make, use, or sell that invention. So for prosecution, what prosecution is basically helping the inventor get to that point where they have a patent, translating their ideas for their invention into this stack of paper that can be later used to defend your rights. And what litigation is basically after that's all been done, you're fighting with other companies, other parties that are either trying to infringe your rights or are claiming that you're infringing their rights. And you get into this big argument, lawyers get involved, and they have to figure out like who's actually right in this situation.
I've got to ask, which one did you prefer? And which one and are you even going to be staying in patent law after you graduate?
I'm almost certain that I will be staying in patent law after I graduate. Yeah, I really like the work I'm doing now in litigation. I think there are certain like stereotypes, I would say, associated with the kind of person that does each of them. Patent prosecutors tend to have a background, a very like heavy technical background. A lot of them have masters and PhDs in a particular field. A lot of them had probably careers in fields like engineering before they came to law. And people that are very heavily invested in those kinds of STEM fields are a little bit on the nerdier side. So that's kind of the reputation that prosecutors have. I hope I'm not like
Hilarious.
misrepresenting anything, but that's what I've heard, and that's actually kind of what I've observed in the summer that this past summer that I've been able to see both sides.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
Whereas litigators are generally more adept at talking to people, engaging with them, going back and forth and like resolving disputes, and it all involves a lot of legal research too, which I particularly enjoy, finding out what the law is in this particular jurisdiction, what are strategies in which we can limit our opposing parties' attacks on us, what are the best ways that we can mount sufficient attack on them. um, yeah, it's more combative, but it's also more exciting in my opinion.
Talk to me about how you got these internships. Is it kind of similar to how you've gotten previous internships, or was the experience very different?
Both of them were actually different from each other. So last year's summer internship I got through my school's portal. So my school basically has a job board, and they post listings from mostly local firms in the area that are looking for summer interns. And this particular firm was based in New Jersey, a little bit of a ways out. It was a pretty long commute, and that firm was mostly for prosecution. So that's what I did that summer. And then for this summer, currently, I actually was recruiting for it during last summer's internship. So those processes are, it's called OCI, on campus interviews, and they happen about a year in advance. And I'd say it's pretty comparable to the system for recruiting like people in finance, where they like to screen applicants early on. Sometimes it seems like every year it gets earlier and earlier, but it's at least 1 year in advance. So the firms will come to the school and they'll start recruiting. They'll do screening interviews, and then if they like you enough, they'll do a second round interview or maybe one or two more. And then after that, they make their decision.
Going a little bit off topic here, we've talked so much about your main focus, the law, but you did also mention that you loved this copyright class because of your interest in music. I do hear from our mutual connection that you are a very talented musician. So how do you keep that passion for music? How do you keep music in your life when you're doing your work in law?
The easiest answer is that I live in New York City. I think it's one of the very last cities where you could really do these kinds of musical pursuits outside of your career or your school without, too much extra effort. And I'm originally a jazz musician by training, so I feel like that kind of translated well to other musical contexts. Like I can adapt pretty much to whatever genre that people ask me to play. I do piano mainly, and it's also a matter of priorities. I try to intentionally keep my evenings as free as possible because that's when gigs generally tend to happen. And lastly, I think it's also about luck. I think I'm very lucky in that I know a lot of musicians that are either doing music full time or have music be their like serious side hustle. Um, and once you get your foot in the door and they know that you can play and you can play well, then it opens up a lot of opportunities to just play with them and like hopefully get more into the scene.
That's so cool. You're still performing, like even through all this. Like you're on New York City stages. That's so cool.
It's a nice way to blow off some steam, I would say. It's because I think everybody in law school blows off steam, or has some kind of release one way or another.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not all that healthy, but I think the more you devote your energies to things that are good for you and are enriching and hopefully enriching other people's lives, I think that's probably for the best.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I'd love to come see you perform. That'd be awesome. I do want to turn to your journey to law school because indeed we've hinted at some very fascinating previous work. So I want to start with simply why law school and what research did you do before making this step and in order to make sure that you were making the right step for your career?
So, as I hinted at before, I wasn't always pre-law. I was actually pre-med for all of college pretty much, and then for about 2 years after that, while I was working at a hospital, um, I got my degree in biology, and then started working during the pandemic in Mass General Hospital in Boston as a
Hmm.
clinical research coordinator. And this was right during the pandemic. It was 2020. We had just like graduated virtually, and
Yeah.
the job at the hospital was all in person though, because we had to do a lot of patient interaction. We had to recruit them in person and then get their samples in person. And that experience was like very eye opening for me as to what it is actually like to work in a clinical setting. So I'm very grateful for that. But what ended up happening was that because I had so much exposure to what it's like to actually be in medicine or to be a doctor, I eventually came to realize that this is not really the career for me.
Yeah.
There were a lot of pressures that were pushing me towards this career in medicine that I think kind of lessened the more I got into it and found out what it was like. So at
Yeah.
a certain point, I think it was in 2022. Yeah, I think it was the fall of 2022 that I realized I don't want to be a doctor anymore.
Wow.
Which is, in a way, it's freeing because you can have the space to really think about what you want to do. And I finally had the opportunity to realize that the things that I enjoyed doing in college and the things that I was good at were not related to science so much as they were to writing and reading and that kind of more literary analysis. And I knew that the law was a pretty stable path and that it seemed well suited enough to my interest and skill set. So I basically took a jab at it. I would not recommend this to anybody, but I took the LSAT after only like a month of studying, which is, yeah,
What?
it was not great because the timing was unfortunate. I decided not to stay in medicine pretty late, and I only decided to late in the year, I mean. And
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
was like December of that year when I decided to apply to law school, and I realized, oh shoot, I have to actually sign up for this LSAT that's happening in January, like right now. Otherwise, I'll have to wait until next year to apply. So
Right.
I basically registered for it right away and studied for a month and then took the LSAT and just kind of like sent out applications.
Firstly, impressive to be able to study and get a good score that got you into a good school. Very impressive.
Thank you.
Secondly, why not wait another year? Were you like, I can't do this job anymore? Like, why not be like, I can just do it one more year and then start later?
I think at that point, I was basically there's not a lot of upward mobility in that particular job. I was already a senior research coordinator at that point. And after
Mm-hmm.
that, you can't really move that much more up until you start getting to, say, clinical trials, which is a whole different field. And if you're going to do that, then you might as well stay there for even longer. So I knew that if I were to wait another year, then I would have had to stay at the hospital for a total of close to 4.5 years, which I felt was like not really worth it opportunity cost wise. So I figured like I might as well like try to get into the best law school I can right now and then,
Mm-hmm.
see where that takes me and just make up for it with, a stronger effort later on.
Got
Yeah.
it.
So it was mostly me trying to make the best out of a non-ideal situation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fair enough. Your research coordinator work sounds intense, especially given that it was COVID. Can you dive more into what your responsibilities were and how COVID impacted your work?
The biggest impact it had is that we all were wearing masks the whole time. I
Yeah.
didn't even, I don't think I even saw my coworkers' full faces until like 2 years into the job, which is kind of shocking. Yeah, it was a different time. They were unprecedented times, as they said back then.
Unprecedented times, indeed.
Yeah, my main role was to manage this big study at my lab. My lab was mainly focused on inflammatory bowel disease, which is Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. So we had this long-running study that started in 2005, and you can imagine how many patients we might have enrolled since then. And we were trying to, recruit more patients and, get data from them and take their samples. And a lot of these visits were happening during their colonoscopies. So I think I've personally witnessed, oh gosh, close to 300 colonoscopies in person during my
Oh,
time there.
wow. That is a lot of colons to be seeing.
So yeah, I know the gut inside and out. Most people
Yeah.
do not have that privilege.
Yeah, I mean, can't say that I do. I mean, I that sounds tough, but that's cool. A cool statistic to have under your belt.
Yeah, I pull it out as a fun fact sometimes when people
Totally. Oh my
ask.
gosh, you could use it in your two truths and a lie game for
Mhm.
your next icebreaker that I'm sure you'll be doing soon.
Exactly. They ask you for fun facts all the time in law. I didn't even realize.
Yeah, and you've got one at the ready. I love it.
hmm But towards the end, once I became like a senior coordinator, I think I was more involved on the data management side. We had understandably, a lot of data going back from 2005 onwards, and there were some things to clean up because all the data is supposed to be in alignment with the samples that you actually have in your freezers, and sometimes that's not actually true. So it was kind of my job to make sure that those two areas were in alignment.
Cool. That sounds like very cool work. So then that begs the question, what is similar and what is different between the healthcare world and the legal world? Have you noticed things that are comparable, or are you just like these are two separate worlds and really it's like few things that keep them connected?
I would say, granted, I'm not actually a lawyer yet, so I don't have like the full picture.
Soon to be 1 year, less than a year from now, you will be a lawyer.
Here's hoping, but yes, I've noticed a few things. I think the biggest similarity between healthcare and law is that they both benefit from having a high level of skill in time management and organization. Because at least in my job in healthcare, I was dealing with multiple studies at the same time and seeing multiple patients, and you have to keep track of, follow-up visits when the patient is going to be coming in for their next colonoscopy. And then you have to prepare a file for each new patient that you enroll, and you have to try to track them over the years. And in law, you are also potentially dealing with multiple cases at the same time. And these cases also can run for years and years. And so you have to keep track of how those cases are doing and their deadlines for filing certain things. And sometimes, clients will make certain requests of you that you have to, comply with, like in a timely basis. So making mistakes with your time management can be pretty damaging in both areas. So it's important to, be diligent about that matter.
Interesting. Gosh, to be honest, I would have said they are two separate fields. Going back slightly, just while I think of it, you mentioned that you realized that you were more interested in this like literary analysis. Was there any part of your work as a research coordinator, or even like your time at Columbia, that kind of made you realize that you were interested in that? Like, could you look back on and be like, wow, yeah, I actually really enjoyed that class, and so I think I'd enjoy being a lawyer?
Yeah, it actually wasn't a class, but it was a journal of sorts. It was a campus publication called the Columbia Witness that I helped out with since freshman year, and then eventually rose up to the level of editor in chief. And when
Wow.
I look back on that experience, uh, looking back at it when I was like transitioning from healthcare to law is kind of what really pushed me into law to begin with. Because a lot of the things I was doing in my capacity as editor in chief are pretty similar to the things that I'm doing now. They involve a lot of editing, a lot of you got to be very nitpicky about grammar and syntax sometimes, and you got to meet deadlines, and you got to help other people meet their deadlines, which is pretty much an impossible task.
Yeah.
But you have to
Especially
try.
college students. Yeah.
Exactly, especially college students that aren't doing this for a grade.
Yeah, yeah. No, exactly.
So that experience helping run that journal was something that I think, resonated with the kinds of skills that I felt I had in that area. And my gut feeling about the applicability of those skills was correct because later on when I was interviewing for, different firms, they would often ask me like, "Oh, what was that experience like?" And, what kind of things did you do in the journal? And it seemed like, a lot of those reading and writing skills do actually pay off in law.
Columbia Witness, you said?
Hmm.
What did it write about? What was it about?
It was I think the only Christian publication on campus. Trying to I was trying to basically turn it around a little bit to be a little more outward facing and try to expand the audience beyond what it had been before. So that required a bit of a reorganization, and yeah, so it taught me a lot of things about like managing an organization and what is actually required out of like the different roles that people had. Yeah, and then I got to write for it a lot, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's so cool. I can't believe I completely missed this. It's so funny to hear about different people's experiences at the same exact school, and they are just so vastly different. That there's so many opportunities to take advantage of at college that, like, you just can't possibly do it all. But that's very cool. I'll have to check it out. I want to wrap up our time by getting your advice. You, as we've heard, have had such an interesting career path, and I'm sure so many people will resonate it with. So I'd love to hear what advice you'd have for those listening. Firstly, the most obvious question to ask you: what advice would you have for those who are maybe thinking about a career pivot? I mean, going from pre-med to law is quite a difference. So what advice would you have for people who are making that change?
I would say you really want to take advantage of the opportunity to be a little more philosophical. When you're a student, when you're working, often your time is taken up by those things. But when you have the chance and really think about what you value in life and what brings you joy, I think that's a good starting point. I've heard it somewhere that a career that's really good for you is one that sits at the intersection of what you're good at, what you enjoy, and what the market can accommodate. And often I think people they gravitate towards one over the other and they don't look at the issue holistically, and that's often to
Mm-hmm.
their detriment. And lastly, one of my old bosses said something that has stuck with me, which is when you're trying to look for something new, you have to make sure that you're running towards something and not simply running away from something. And that was advice that I got when I was basically decided that I didn't want to do medicine anymore. I was told that it's not enough to just choose a different career path because you don't want to be doing the thing you're doing currently. You have to actually want to do that thing that's new.
That is excellent advice. I'm gonna have to take that into account into my own life. Next, what advice would you have for applying to law school? I know you mentioned your LSAT and how you wish you had more time studying, but any other advice?
Law school is interesting because the system is pretty stratified. There are ways, if your goal is to, break into a particular class of law firms, such as big law, or get into, say, like academia, there are multiple paths to get there, but often the easiest path that doesn't give you as much stress is to front load the heavy lifting. And by that, I mean, if you have the opportunity and you have the resources to really, work hard and do the LSAT, for example, really well on the LSAT, that'll get you
Mm-hmm.
into a really good school, which in turn will make things a lot easier for you in the long run. Things like getting into big law are much harder because you have to distinguish yourself more if you're at a lower ranked school.
Got it.
So if you're in that position, then there are, of course, plenty of opportunities, but you do have to also like be concerned about getting good grades your first year of law school, participating in a lot of activities, even networking a lot more than you might have otherwise. So save yourself the stress by, being stressed at the beginning rather than at the end of your journey.
Fair enough. I love it. And then What is something that you wish you'd known, just generally speaking, about careers upon graduating?
I think I had a lot of tunnel vision about medicine when I was in college and for a little bit after that. And that kind of caused me to lose sight of the fact that every career requires compromise. Some careers people are drawn to because they're inherently more stable, and some careers demand less of your time. Some are more exciting, and some require less of a financial investment up front, like additional education.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no career that's perfect. No career basically does all of those things. So I would say if you're fortunate enough to be in a position where you can actually choose what you do and how you make money, which is not a guarantee,
That's for
I
sure.
would say you need to make sure that you actually take it upon yourself to choose and choose thoughtfully.
That is excellent advice. Something I also wish I'd known when I was graduating, for sure.
I wish we had been friends sooner.
I know. We should have met sooner. Amelia, I'll blame her. That is such excellent advice. I so appreciate that. I feel like you're so right. Every job does take compromise and sacrifice. So you gotta be making sure you're being careful about what you're choosing to do and what you plan to do. All right, well, it is almost time to wrap up. But before I let you go, one final question for you. Sean, what's next?
All right. What's next is that I'll finish this next year of school strong and I'll try to enjoy being a student one last time.
Yes. One
Uh,
last time.
and then hopefully jump into the working world and see where my career goes from there.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on all that you've accomplished so far. Good luck with 3L. Good luck with all that comes after, including the bar. Um, like that is a lot of work. After you've done all of this, then they're like, you know what, you need another test. Seems crazy to me, but good luck with all of it. Congratulations. And I'm so excited to see where your career goes. And I want to come see you play. I'm in New York, so you've got to tell me where you're playing.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. I will definitely let you know. And it's been such a pleasure being on here.